So, this particular concept is called integration, right? Sexual integration. Now, this is something that I believe is important to talk about for several reasons. But one of those reasons is I think we need to have a clearer understanding about the difference between strategically settling to position and posture yourself for power and control in a relationship, uh, lessening your own attraction to someone in the process, and the difference between that and being actually integrated. So, what does sexual integration mean? I believe sexual integration is more of an important topic to cover than sexual liberation. Like I said in the previous video, I believe that sexual liberation is more so a lie. It's more so a farce. It's based in the concept that Western civilization is already sexually repressed. So they give people an outlet to live out their shadows, but those living out the shadow doesn't come from a place of integration. So it doesn't actually solve the problem, it just exacerbates the problem. By people delving more into their shadows, while this idea of tradition and traditional dating is still prevalent, what will happen is people will just have experiences that make them even more unlikely to be satisfied in a committed monogamous relationship. Now, I don't think everybody has to be, or everyone should be in a committed monogamous relationship. But I also understand that for one who is integrated, that can be a very fulfilling situation. So when I talk about integration, I'm talking about more so you're actually sexually attracted to things in a person that are outside of, it's really just about being able to mix the concept of Madonna and whore and find the fullness of a person and to be attracted and to desire that. So the gender flex theory is one aspect of sexual integration, right? It's where your baseline level of your respective gender's energy or your aesthetics or your image, like the way you put that out, is so strong, either in the masculinity or femininity or in the raw sexual energy, that you can implement or have different aspects of yourself that are reminiscent of the other sex. And because you're maxed out in your respective sex or gender, once you incorporate those other things, they don't lower your attractiveness to the point where you're no longer attractive. They lower maybe your attractiveness just a little bit for your respective gender, but overall it elevates you to the level where someone highly desires you or someone highly desires you for something long term. So an example of this is what we need to understand in this process is premature integration as well. And I made a video about that, so I'm not going to delve too much into that in this video, but I have to touch on it a little bit. So some examples of integration would be the men who say that they like women with stretch marks, the men who say that they like women who are natural, who have natural hair, who don't wear a lot of makeup, you know, who dress comfortably, modestly. In some instances, in many instances, men who have that mindset could be integrated men. So what I mean by that is if you are genuinely lustful and sexually desire or prefer a woman who dresses or who doesn't wear a lot of makeup, and you find a woman who is attractive and you prefer her that way, that's integrated. Why? Because if you are in that type of situation where it's long term, you have to see someone on a daily basis, a regular basis, they're not always going to be able to clean themselves up a whole lot. They're not always going to be able to get pressed up and dolled up to see you every day. So if you're able to be attracted to them being domestic on a sexual level, then it puts you in a position where you don't have to rely on a Madonna whore complex to go find women outside of that situation to maintain your desire. But some men will posture themselves on purpose and pander to women and convince them not to max out their femininity or their masculine, to not posture, to posture them, uh, tongue tied up, that will pander to women, telling them that they don't need to max out their femininity in order to do that, so that it will make women feel comfortable with themselves in the position that they're at, when a lot of the times their level of femininity or attractiveness isn't high enough on its own to get a high level of interest man, or a man that they're highly interested in. It's not really even about high value or low value. It's about a man who she is into, that's good enough in her mind. So these are things to keep in mind. So an example of this would be maybe a Derek Jackson, or maybe just different people who take a Madonna whore complex where they will take a woman and say she's a good girl, so she doesn't have to dress like this, she doesn't have to do all this, she doesn't have to do all that, and he'll just purposefully want her to not maximize how attractive she is because he wants control. Both men and women tend to do this, where sometimes people will do something called mate guarding. It's an evolutionary psychology concept where to guard your mate, you will do things or encourage them to do things that will cause them to be less attractive conspicuously to the opposite sex. And through that process, it will cause you to feel more comfortable, but you will also lose desire and attraction for them in the process. So, an example of this would be both men and women getting comfortable in a relationship and trying to make each other fat, trying to make each other obese. So a man may, try to feed a woman until she gets obese so that less men will want her. But he's going to want her less because of it. It's just a possession thing, it's about control. It's not really about a desire or attraction. And some women do the same thing. Now, I'll say this some women, how that works is they may be attracted to a man with a gut or a belly. And sometimes that larger mass indicates, maybe power and strength to that woman. And because of that, it may make her feel more comfortable, more safe, and more protected. If it's about feeling more protected, then that's a good thing. That's something that's based in the masculine feminine dynamic. But if it's about her feeling like there's going to be less competition, then that's a bad thing. Because one, that's not true. And two, that lessens her own attraction to him, and it's about control. Now, another thing that can indicate this is maybe a man being heavier set is something that will indicate that he has more money. Now, that's not necessarily the case in the U.S. society, but throughout history, a man having enough resources to become fat means that he has resources. There are certain places in Africa now to this day where to get a woman ready for marriage, they will get her as obese as possible so that she will come off as if she is well off financially. Because to be obese means you must be well off financially, but it's not the most healthy thing. So another aspect of it is this, like women who are attracted to dad bods, right? Uh, Women who are attracted to dad bods, dad clothes, different dad fetishes, right? A woman who is sexually attracted or has a fetish for domesticated men is something that gives a relationship the ability to have sustainability when it comes to the sexual connection and compatibility. A man who is sexually attracted to women doing domesticated things like washing dishes, like if you see a woman cooking or washing dishes, it turns you on. That's sexual integration. A woman who gets turned on by feeling like her man emotionally understands her. A woman who gets turned on by her man being affectionate with her or by her man showing his emotions for her. That's integrated because that is seen as by the internalized definitions of masculinity, that's generally seen as a feminine trait to be emotional. So a woman, but every person to a certain extent is emotional. Every person has emotions. So a woman who can handle different aspects of, emotionality within a man without trying to take control and without seeing that just as an opportunity to take control or without losing sexual attraction, that is a situation where a woman is more integrated. That's something that can lead to the sustainability of a relationship because communication is something that helps relationships. Although I do say and believe that communication can be overrated, and I say that as a communicator. That's what I do. That's how I think. I'm a communicator. With that, I understand that communication is overrated. There's different ways that this can work. There's different ways it can work. A man could be integrated by seeing a woman who has sex with him quickly and then not discounting her as a hoe and saying that she's not relationship material. That shows integration because he can see those quote unquote hoe aspects of a woman and still see her for a full woman. So that's integration. You're integrating the Madonna and the whore. For a woman, it's integrating the gentleman and the gigolo. One aspect of that is a woman who isn't offended by the word bitch. Like when her man says it, like when they're having sex, like you're my nasty bitch, you're my hoe, you're my slut, you're my whore. When a woman can have feelings for a man and they can communicate that way and that increases her level of desire, then when you can integrate those things into a relationship, then oftentimes that indicates a certain level of integration. Because oftentimes if a woman isn't integrated, then she places a man in the role of being a gentleman, right? Oftentimes, a beta male provider is seen as a gentleman, and she will try to check and reprimand and say something to a man or try to check him about things that she would consider disrespectful to women. But when a woman is integrated and she understands, certain aspects of masculinity and understands men, then she won't see it as disrespect. It's just going to turn her on more. So those are different aspects of it. Now, I personally believe that it's best to go at situations from the angle of sex first, biology first, because when you go at it from biology first, you can establish the sexual attraction, and then it's much easier to go through the process of the gender flex theory, which is when the desire is high enough, you integrate things of the other gender into it so that it doesn't lower the attraction too much and you stop at the point where they can't handle it. But every once in a while, the biggest trick, the biggest trap when it comes to relationships is societal narratives that tell men to be more feminine, that tell women to be more masculine, and then falling for the trap of someone who's presenting that to you prematurely without you seeing those other sides of them that show that they can actually max out their masculinity or femininity. So, an example of that would be a man who meets a woman who is pretty logical and masculine in her energy, but she's attractive, right? And she shows some interest. She's consistent. Her consistency comes from her masculine energy and being logical about things. Maybe a man who finds a woman who's able to debate him and have very deep, stimulating conversations. Oftentimes a man will neglect the sexual aspect of a relationship because he finally found a woman that he can have a conversation with. Oftentimes those type of women will try to mold you, or eventually they'll get to the place where their energy is like they're trying to be your mother, and you'll allow that because your feminine energy within yourself is what makes you compatible with her masculine energy when both of you are prematurely integrated. So that's a trap. I call that the Topanga trap. A woman being aggressive and assertive with you, and you needing and requiring that because of you're afraid of being assertive yourself. And the way that can, trick women out is, let's say a woman will find a man and he will give the impression that he doesn't judge women about their sexual past when he does. And then when she sleeps with him on the first date, he'll give the impression that he's open minded, but then he will still lose interest with her because she had sex with him quickly. See, that's a man who's not integrated. And people pretending to be integrated when they aren't is the reason why there are a lot of people who are afraid of certain things. It's the reason why women are afraid of getting pumped and dumped. And it is the reason why men are afraid of going on multiple dates with women without sex being the outcome. Because when you invest emotionally as a man, and you're investing emotionally and financially in order that you'll hopefully get access to a woman sexually, you know, uh, it's just one of those things where that comes from a feminine place already. That's not a masculine thing. So when we're talking about integration, we're talking about things that create sustainability and the nurturing of a sexual relationship. A woman, there's different things that come with it because it's all about not needing someone to maintain masculine or feminine frame in order to maintain your desire or attraction or love for the individual. So for a man, for a woman, her feminine frame is often her makeup or how her body looks before she has children. It's often, the clothes that she wears, trying to go out of her way to look sexy. A lot of times that comes with pressure. A woman should be able to do that from a place of desire, but she should desire to do those things for you as well to keep things spicy. But integration isn't about keeping things spicy. It's about having a natural desire that comes from time spent with a person. Oftentimes with a Madonna whore complex or a gent gigolo complex, when someone is sexually repressed, the excitement is based on novelty and not on depth. Once the sexual excitement is shifted to a place of depth, it gets to a certain place where the longer you know an individual, the greater your sexual connection gets. In those situations, sometimes you don't even have to go overly into a bunch of novel actions. You don't have to get super out the box. You can have a certain level of just having, what do you call it? You can just have a certain level of just getting in missionary with the person, making eye contact, learning each other's bodies, and just learning to breathe and be in the moment. See, these are things that correlate with being sexually integrated, right? Sexual integration. Another aspect of it is, as a man, you find a woman more attractive after she's had your children. The fact that she's carried your children, she's pregnant, she's having your babies. Her body is not going to be at her optimal shape. But when you understand that a woman who matures in her sexuality as well, when you realize that a woman who's into her late 30s, early 40s, sometimes 50s is going to be much more sexual and much more just much more sexual than she was in her late teens, of age and early 20s. When you realize that and you can accept that, then you're able to have a relationship with someone that can span beyond just her quote unquote fruitful years and beyond her quote unquote, childbearing years and her quote unquote high value years. And when a woman is integrated, she can, be with the man and still maintain attraction for him, even if things aren't brand new, even if it is in a situation that's taboo. You know, Oftentimes when you're sexually repressed, the taboo is the thing that ignites the desire. And that's often what leads to cheating because something has to be new, something has to be taboo, something has to be novel, something has to be out the box. Now, I believe in doing things out the box. I believe in doing new things. I believe in having fun. I believe in trying to spice things up. I think that's always important. But you want to make sure you have a certain level of sexual integration because when you don't, there is a possibility that sexuality can be like a Pandora's box for you, where once you open up that box, you can't go back. And once you open up that box, you're going to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And eventually, you may get to very depraved places that aren't really from a place of your natural desire, but just from a place of chasing that taboo because that's where the desire is sparked. And it could lead to the wrecking of relationships, the wrecking of marriages, the destruction of families. It could lead to the destruction of your life. If those things are things that are naturally in you. Now, I'm not someone who judges the actions as good or bad. I just look at the motivation.